staff is by far the biggest thing and the hardest thing, I would say, for majority of CrossFit owners, small gym owners. Because if you don't have great staff and you don't necessarily treat your staff, and by treat, I mean in terms of salary and growth, qualification development, they won't stay because the next CrossFit gym around the corner will have them. So for my staff, majority of my staff have been 5 years plus. We treat them like you would if you took on a staff member at a global business. They have all the privileges of a global business, and we continuously develop them. And their salaries are good, because I think, again, that's another area of the struggle in this industry, is that salaries are not necessarily great and they're not attractive enough for people to want to stay. But like any business, you know, if you want your staff to stay, you need to pay them well for what they're worth.
Welcome to this week's episode of Connecting the Dots. I'm so happy to have Gemma Webster with me this week. Gemma has more than 20 years of experience in the fitness industry. She started as an athlete, first as a runner, then competing in judo, then competing in CrossFit as she fell in love with barbells. By 2015, she's opened her own CrossFit, a very successful box. And these days, she's building another business as CEO of Boxology. It's based in the UAE. All the while, she's a seminar staff for Burgener Strength courses, traveling across the world. Gemma, welcome. So happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I've been really enjoying following the show. The episode with Amina really resonated with me, and I thought, let's just find out have a conversation about day-to-day of gyms. So yeah, I'm excited to dig deep.
And you're a wonderful person to add a very rich tapestry of perspective to that. So let's connect the dots. How did you get from running to black belts in judo to CrossFit and now building Boxology?
Well, I started competing at a very young age. Judo was something that I think the skills that it gave you, I think, as a child, it really worked for me as a martial arts. I enjoyed the hard work. It made me very resilient. I had some very influential characters when I was growing up. Steve Bates and Alf Bates. Particularly Alf Bates had a huge influence on judo, and I saw hard work from them, and I saw a fitness and a lifestyle, not for life, not just for sport. And with running, I think, it taught me that that's the finish line. We need to get there. And that was that. And I enjoyed being able to, for me, seeing that finish line and coming first was the goal. And I trained that way. And I think a lot of what I learned as a child in sport carried through into my adult life. I was always kind of really very driven, very much wanting to go outside of what people would call the box and try different things and aim high. And some of those things became quite challenging to do. One, perhaps because obviously you're a female in sport. Running was very much a sport for both sexes. Judo, so much. But I think as we entered into the CrossFit world, it was very much a sport that was trying to open up a world for females. It was still not fully there, but it definitely was showing more opportunity to become, I suppose, equal, in a sense that the girls could sometimes do as much as the boys. Obviously, there's always going to be that fitness difference between male and females, just biologically, but it allowed us to achieve as much as they could. We were equal to them in terms of the sport. And I think that getting to owning the gym and running a gym, it's been a huge passion of mine. It was something that I learned from a child. As I talked about my stepdad, he worked with me in judo. He was my coach from a very young age. And I used to go to circuit training with him, the good old fashioned, put the bench onto the rigging, run up and down, old fashioned burpees. We went for runs together. So I really saw hard work from him, and he had that was his passion. And he also had a job alongside that. And that's something that I developed. I was working in business. I worked as a project director for some very big lifestyle brands. That taught me and instilled running a business, learning operations. And that really helped me grow into, right, putting those two worlds together. And that's where it led me down the path of wanting to open a gym.
I mean, you take your experience from everything in life and basically funnel it into who you are and what you can do. And I think your athletics background really, of course, created discipline in so many other domains of your life. I remember from our first introduction conversation, and I think it's really important to mention because you talk about, you know, leading the way as a woman in some of these areas. Like in judo, you're quite accomplished in judo, and you were the first woman to accomplish a few things in judo and as well in CrossFit. Can you share those stories as well?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I started judo at a very, very young age, and the story behind it was my mum and dad wasn't together, and my brother very much needed kind of to develop those skills, I guess, that when you don't have that father figure around. And my mum was like, "Oh, I'm going to find something for him to do, like martial arts." So I was there on the sideline trying to copy everything that was going on. I think this was near 5 years old, and they were like, "Do you know what? She's so annoying. Just let her come on." So, so from that age, I think that the difference, I suppose, between my brother and I was that my brother never really wanted to hurt people. And that's not to say that I really did, but I definitely had that ability to develop aggression into the sport to win. You know, aside of not necessarily thinking that I was going to hurt someone, but thinking that my job here is to get them down and keep them down. And that for martial arts is definitely not for everyone. And I would say CrossFit is very similar in that way. CrossFit is not for everyone, and it is very much hard work. All sport is hard work. To be good at sport, it is definitely hard. You've got to have grit, you've got to have determination, you've got to be very self-motivated, particularly in judo, running, and even CrossFit. They're sports where you have to be very, very self-motivated to be able to get up, do the training, put the hard work in, develop the skills, learn and grow. And like you say, they are skills that take you into life. You know, judo I did from a very, very young age. I did really well in judo. I remember a particular moment for me as a child. I had won gold lots and lots and lots of times. And I remember I moved up a weight category. I think I maybe was about 11-ish, 11 or 12. My mum does have it on VHS. For those of us that remember VHS. My mum was very much my cheerleader in the background.
Yeah.
I was quite small, and the girl that I was against, that was, her and I kind of won 2 or 3 fights each. This was the sort of final, who would take gold or silver. She was probably a head taller than me, and she was throwing me around like a rag doll. And I remember thinking, for me, this was really new. Like, I hadn't experienced not being the leader in a fight. And I started to get upset, and I started to well up. And the poor girl leant down to sort of check if I was okay. And that was my moment. I swept her over my shoulder. I was there in scarfold, holding her down. And I actually did win silver that time. And I remember saying to my coach at the time, I didn't win gold. I didn't win gold. And he said, it's fine, because silver is gold in waiting. And it really also taught me that sport doesn't come easy. Although it had come so easily to me as a child, then, it flipped 360, and that actually I really need to put the work in, because with martial arts, it's very much like you have your toolbox, and that toolbox grows. But sometimes your opponents kind of know what toolbox you have because they've watched you,
Yeah.
and you continuously have to bring new things in so that you can catch people off guard. There is an element of making sure that you take those moments and you really grow from them. So that really, really stayed with me throughout. And then with running, I don't know, just naturally was a very, very fast kid. And, it was just something that just come very naturally for me as a sprinter. I did, as a young child, 50 meters, then 100, 200. And then when I moved into CrossFit, obviously you had this very much explosive power about you as an athlete. Naturally, there was elements of CrossFit that I found very easy. And I did do gymnastics as a child, but by no means competitively. However, I think what you notice about CrossFit is it opens up just so many skills. There's so much, as you know, there's so much there to accomplish. And I think the beauty of CrossFit is that there is that constant evolution of you as an athlete. You think you're good at something, and then the next thing is there, or you're doing more repetitions, or it's appearing more in a workout, which is developing fatigue in a different way. And I think for me, when I initially found CrossFit, 2011-ish, I would say, I was working as for Nike as a master trainer. We would go to lots of Nike events, and we would help kind of set up the warm up, get the events going. And there was another master trainer, and she had been doing CrossFit for maybe a year. And she said to me, you should try CrossFit. You'll love it. And she said, you run, and then you do some pull-ups, and then you lift some weights. And I think we had never experienced anything like that before, where all those skills come together. I mean, I had done gym and strength and conditioning for a long, long time, but never had we put elements together in that way. And I was like, what? You run and then you do pull-ups? And she said, yeah. So
all the rules were broken. All of the rules.
And I think back then there was maybe 2-3 maximum CrossFit boxes or gyms in London at the time. And this one that we found had been open maybe 2 weeks. It was on Chelsea Bridge. The beauty, and I've said the beauty of CrossFit again, but another beautiful thing about CrossFit is that everybody goes through that initial journey where they walk into the gym and they've never done CrossFit before. And I know by people looking at you, don't believe that you ever were there.
Yeah.
Because they see you now, they think that you've never been through this journey that they're about to go through. But I did, and we walked into the gym, and they were Irish, the owners, and had come over from Ireland. Had already had CrossFit Dublin in Ireland established for a couple of years. And he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a test on you guys, which I think was a 500-meter row. So, 40, 30, 20. It had 10 pull-ups at the end. And I don't think that him and I did anything correctly at all. But we went like the lion was chasing us. We were so fast. Him and I were racing each other. All that competitive spirit come out in both of us. And it was honestly like all the lights went off for me. I was like, this sport is amazing. It brings so many sports that I did as a child
together.
And I thought it was amazing. And I honestly couldn't believe that everyone didn't know about it. And it was still obviously so new, but in Europe it was just starting to find its place in the world. And that's for me was what I wanted to do. I ended up working at this CrossFit gym for 3 years or so. I also moved out to Ireland and worked there and lived there for 2 years, worked in CrossFit Dublin and CrossFit Blackrock. And that's where I met Bo Burgener from Burgener Strength and Sophie Burgener. We developed an amazing friendship, and I saw in them very similar qualities of how they had designed Burgener Strength for another sport, for weightlifting. And they were a very hardworking family. They had grit. They were motivational, they're inspirational. And you've never met in a family like them. They're very, very close family too. So that took me down the path of trying to think about, could I open a gym? And I think what I learned from lots of different other CrossFit gyms was the culture, the community. By seeing lots of different gyms, they all have very much a different community and culture. But I think ultimately CrossFit is what keeps people coming back is the community. And we see that so much more in other sports now. But back then, there was not really anything like that allowed you to be part of that community in that world. It wasn't just in your gym. It was the Open back then, the CrossFit Open back then was so big. Was so big. For me, in the very much earlier days of CrossFit, you really knew everybody, because there were so few gyms in the UK that were CrossFit affiliated. You kind of knew the person that owned that gym, the person that worked here, even to some extent in Ireland, there wasn't that many CrossFit gyms. So it's very much this kind of shared community and culture among the coaches, even if you wasn't necessarily gym owners. And I think now, oh my goodness, the amount of competitions that you could do one every day if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Now, But
Yeah.
back then there was maybe one in Ireland a year, one in London. There was the London Throwdown, there was the Irish Throwdown, and maybe one or two other competitions. There was nothing like the Turf Games, the AFEX,
Yeah.
Hyrox. Exactly. I mean, even local CrossFit competitions through local gyms are running much more regularly than they ever were. And I remember doing this CrossFit Tipperary competition, and I actually ended up breaking my first rib in the competition in the final. The bar went between my AC joint and my first rib, and I ended up blacking out at the end. And I was taken to Tipperary Hospital in my hot pants, the original CrossFit hot pants
Yeah.
and sports bra. Yes. So that was definitely an experience. But I think for me, being somebody that was in it from much earlier, I've developed so many amazing relationships within the CrossFit community around the world, and I think that everybody never really knew where it was going to go. CrossFit has opened a world for many other sports. As you know, I'm on the seminar team for weightlifting. Weightlifting itself, it's opened a world for weightlifting, particularly females. I think it allowed women to feel that wasn't out of reach for them, and CrossFit allowed them to develop kind of an initial skill and a passion for a sport that they wanted to go off and do
Yeah.
separately to CrossFit. And obviously functional fitness in general has just kind of exploded over the last 2 to 5 years. And I would argue that CrossFit definitely gave an opening to those other sports that have now, for example, Hyrox are now doing amazingly well themselves.
Yeah.
So,
I totally agree, and we had a small conversation about this, but CrossFit was the gateway for fitness as a sport. Like there wasn't fitness was missing that stickiness, that competition element, and it's not a terribly innovative industry before CrossFit and the boutique boom, because a gym looked like a gym, actually still does, like a big box gym. You could go into any big box gym in the world and the layout is the same. You've got a strength zone, you've got a cardio zone, you've got some locker rooms, a group exercise room, and maybe now they've added a functional zone, but that's because of CrossFit. There were no functional zones in big box gyms before CrossFit. And like the community element and the competition element, those were the two things that were and still are missing from like the traditional fitness clubs, and that's what attracted this whole new audience to CrossFit. And CrossFit, like I mean, it was a little bit too scary for a whole big chunk of the population. But if you were on the fringes and you started to dabble in CrossFit because you were a runner, you were a weightlifter, or you were just generally interested, like nothing really handed you your humility like CrossFit, right? Like you were talking about your first CrossFit workout. My first CrossFit workout probably would have been in like 2008. And I remember I was working with a personal trainer out of Toronto. His name is Nick Martin, and he was one of the early CrossFit forerunners back then in Toronto. And he had me do Fran. You want to know what my first Fran time was?
well,
24 minutes.
oh, I was about to say, well, if it's over 15 minutes, you didn't scale properly.
Yeah, no, it was 24 minutes. And he was sitting there looking at his watch, and I'm like, what do you mean we don't rest between sets? Like,
And also, I think I've told my husband this because my husband came into CrossFit a little bit later than me, but I said to him, I took my CrossFit gym on holiday to Croatia. This must have been maybe 2014. And there was a big group of Americans there. And you can just tell back then, you could just tell when people were CrossFit. And that used to be the question that people would ask, what's your Fran time? Now I think Fran's kind of got a little bit lost it's not as, I know I still use it at my gym as one of the test workouts.
she was the A-list CrossFit girl.
it was the worst workout. And also by reading, you think 21, it's not that many, 15, that's not that many, 9, not that many. And then you start it, and the Fran lung really is a real thing that you get. I think, I can't remember what my first Fran time was, but something very similar to you. And I remember the head coach in the gym in Chelsea counting for me, and almost felt like I was in the military in a puddle doing push-ups, because he was shouting at me so much that I can't count. He was shouting, "You can't count, you're doing the reps wrong." And I was thinking, oh my God, this is so stressful. And it hurts so much. It hurts so much. I think my Fran time now it's around 3 minutes, which you would never ever feel, but you would never think would be humanly possible. And when you tell people about Fran, when we talk about it at our gym and we say the fastest time is, 90 seconds, people are like, that is not humanly possible. And that's where we talked about earlier on about that skill with CrossFit being something that keeps you going, because you're always trying to improve upon something, or and the girls, which obviously you and I probably know, but Greg Glassman that created CrossFit said that if there's a girl that can get you on your back in under 5 minutes, she's worth a workout being named after her. So this is where the like classic girls come from, like Elizabeth, Fran,
Yeah.
Chelsea. So all the workouts are actually named after women for that exact reason. And all of them are the most challenging workouts I think you will ever do. And I think that Hyrox has boomed so much because it has, a lower entry point than CrossFit. Some of the movements in CrossFit can feel quite intimidating.
Handstand box, butterfly pull-ups, toes to bar, muscle ups, like it takes you, there's a long road to getting there. And if you are the shorter attention span athlete, then it might not be your path. And I think that's what Hyrox answered for.
I agree. And I think that from COVID, there was such a boom in running and fitness in general. It opened such a world for people, because obviously it was something that they were able to do throughout COVID, with regardless of the rules that were changing throughout the countries were obviously all different, but it allowed most people to be able to go out and go for a run. Hyrox kind of attracts runners because there's such a big
Running
focus
pace.
on running. You have to be able to run. I feel like it's, for me, it feels like a marathon.
Yeah.
But the other movements are relatively easy to acquire. And again, it goes back to kind of from somebody being a sprinter and powerful, that wouldn't necessarily be something that would attract me in a sense, because I would moan the whole time that I was running.
I think you have the mindset to get through anything based on what you're sharing is like, if you could find that finish line that you were running for, you'd make a way to do it. But
There definitely be some moaning in the way, I'm sure.
moaning is okay as long as you keep going. So
Yes.
where you are now is building Boxology is because you have mastered the art of a successful CrossFit box. And that's where your path and my path like diverge a little bit. My husband and I had a CrossFit box in The Hague, and actually it was profitable, but it ended up breaking us as business owners, because running a small business and trying to raise a family, like those two things weren't combinable, and in the end that's what led us to closing. But there are so many people who want to pursue this and pursue this successfully, and you've found the correct formula. So what does that look like in your CrossFit box? Like, what does success look like, and how can small business owners avoid the fate that we had if they want to build a functional training? Because it's not just CrossFit. The same rules apply to any functional training gym.
That's right. That's right. I mean, our journey was not very dissimilar to yours. So when I first opened the gym, I think the skills that I had from previous jobs, for example, like I talked about being a project director, I run projects, I run multi-million-pound projects for agencies, spinning lots of different plates, working with big brands. What comes with big brands are challenging clients because the requirement is high. And I had done that alongside teaching, PTing and boot camping and strength and conditioning, working with Nike, all of those things alongside each other. Initially, when I opened the gym, it was called CrossFit Bromley.
Mm-hmm.
It was the town that we were in, just outside London, in southeast London. And the reason for that was because CrossFit wasn't well known at that point. So I needed to use CrossFit to help develop the gym. Me calling it something, I'm trying to convince people that
Introduce
CrossFit
it.
was right for them, and then convince people to join a gym that was owned by a single person when you've got those big Globo gyms around the corner was a real challenge. But what I did do from the start was I run it like a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the biggest difference to other stories that I've heard along the way, particularly since now we run the consultancy, but previous to the consultancy, just having friendships with other people in the community. There's conversations I have with them about doing things differently because I have that business hat on. And I think, like probably you'll agree, all of us that run CrossFit gyms come wholeheartedly into it. We open it because
Passion.
it's a passion. We open it because we love what we do. I said this very early on. I couldn't understand why everybody wasn't doing this. And I wanted to open my doors and change people's lives through fitness. That's been our ethos since the day we started, change lives through fitness. And I wanted everyone and anyone to know about it. However, that obviously is challenging to run a business and have your heart in it, because sometimes you don't necessarily make the right business decisions. You make
Because of
decisions based
passion.
on
Yeah.
and relationships. The relationships you have with your clients can be very much friendships. People develop partners through CrossFit, friendships through CrossFit. It becomes their whole world. And if the gym isn't running like a business, conversations can be challenging. So I met my husband in 2016. He was actually a member of the gym. That whole story is probably another story in itself, but
I mean,
we
this happens, huh?
it does
Sweaty,
happen.
attractive people meet sweaty, attractive people, and things happen.
I mean, our initial call when he asked me out for a date, I did tell him that I don't date members, and
But
he
I'll
was
make an
like,
exception.
"No," I said, "No, there was no." He said, "Oh, okay." I said, "But I can go out as your friend." So it very much evolved since then. Um, and he worked with he was a diamond dealer. He worked in Hatton Garden in London. He had an amazing background in business and particularly in sales. His ability to sell is amazing. He's got so many different skills. And when the gym for me was tough in 2016, I had to move premises because they wanted to open a block of flats in the building that I had just spent 18 months developing. I looked for months and months and months and months, could not find anything. We ended up finding somewhere that was a lot smaller. We went from near 7,000 square foot to less than 2,000 square foot. We
Wow.
had very lack of facilities. It definitely was a downscale to what we had. But what I would say it taught us was what an amazing community we had. And we were now working with three or four wall ball stations. There was only one place you could do pull-ups. The toilet came straight out onto the gym floor. So if somebody didn't do something nice, you'd have that mid-class. There was so many.
Builds character.
Oh, it did. And resilience. And it was hard work. This would have been 2016, coming 2017, very, very stressful. And I was quite ill.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband said to me, "You're just not yourself." I said, "It's so stressful." We were drilling ourselves. We were working 17 hours. I found out I was pregnant, which is why I was not very well, not because of the stress. That probably didn't help as well. And I just was like, I can't believe this. It's just the worst timing ever. He was all excited like a puppy. And I was like, you can't be excited. What are we going to do? It was just another thing. And as you probably know, people join the CrossFit gym because of you. They stay because of the community, the culture, the CrossFit, the coaching. But initially they build that relationship with you. And that was really, really hard for me to have to take a step back. I think I coached up until maybe 2 or 3 days before I gave birth. I was back on the computer breastfeeding my son the next day. I didn't stay overnight in hospital. I was back on the computer. You know, small business needs you there. And along the way, my biggest passion in CrossFit is great coaching. I have a very high standard of coaching at our gym. I believe in coaching. I believe that CrossFit brought that for people to see that you maybe don't know how to run properly. You maybe don't know how to do this properly. Let someone show you how to develop the skills that has that expertise. Like, we are experts. And, you know, our coaches at Aphobos are very, very, very highly qualified. And I believed in coach development. So someone taught me when I did my apprenticeship in CrossFit. Someone showed me their skills. I then went around the UK, around Ireland and other countries. And I said to myself, what are these coaches doing well? And what are they not doing well? And what do I want for my gym? I'll take all of that good and I'll develop that as my skill set. And I said to myself, do you know what? I want to pay it forward. I'm going to do that for other people. So I initiated this coach development. I ran it for free. It was 6 to 12 weeks. At the end of the 12 weeks, they would then do their CrossFit level 1, but they would spend that time with me first. Took on lots of coaches I took on through my coach development. And it meant that you could really mold and nurture people into the culture of your gym. And sometimes, you know, it's a bit like driving. You've been driving for 10 years and then someone tries to tell you how to drive properly and you're like, oh no, I drive like this. So it allowed our CrossFit gym to very much be the culture that we wanted, to the ethos that we wanted. And with CrossFit, they were still growing in this area. There wasn't really any marketing tools. There wasn't really any business. You probably remember this. There wasn't really much business support from CrossFit. They wasn't really developed enough themselves to be able to provide, well, this is how you do this. This is how you set up a company. This is how you deal with finances, you know, whatever it might be. They didn't have that. So people in the community were really reaching out to each other and saying, does anyone know, do we have to have insurance? What happens if we play music in the gym? There was just so many questions that people didn't know the answers to. And I became a bit of a soundboard for particularly coach development with CrossFit. I did an affiliate roundtable and fed into their roundtable. And that kind of developed within particularly in the UK CrossFit community, where people were reaching out and asking about how they should do certain things. How do we run our coach development? So I think with the success of Phobos has very much been that we run it like a business. It's always been a business. The rules are very, I want to say, black and white, in the sense that, you know, our terms are very clear. And I would say the biggest thing that I learned along the way was ultimately it's understanding your clients and what they would like from the fitness that they're coming here for. What are they coming for? So there's so many things that are out of your control, but there's so many things that you can control.
There's just so many things that I think are worth unpacking in what you're talking about. And first of all, the fitness industry professional standards, we've been butting our heads against that for more than 20 years. Some countries do a better job than others, but kind of as a global standard, we're not moving fast enough or we haven't moved fast enough because it's been sitting here for 20 years to say, you know, a personal trainer means a personal trainer, like a physiotherapist means a physiotherapist. And you understand what their scope of practice is, the education that they've gone through to do what they do. There needs to be the same thing for personal trainers, but because there isn't, you have great personal trainers and you have wretched personal trainers. Same thing for coaches. And then what you did in your coach development program is, I'm sure you identified that pretty early on. I think 12 weeks is a great first step for people to start, going through that mentorship process, really understand the nuanced skills and structure that you need to have for this profession. Like there's another woman that I've spoken to recently, and she's a medical doctor, and she wants to be able to refer her patients to personal trainers. She's like, but I'm not going to do that unless they take my 6-month course to understand the background and the lifestyle diseases that the patients are going to be coming from, so that they have the key skills. This is the same thing for CrossFit. Like you need like this base foundational skill set, then you can specialize, and then you need to continue to progress through your education journey. And that piece is missing. And I love that you identified that by looking at the bright spots from your travels and affiliates as you went. And you're right, there was absolutely no business support, and there still is this business support gap for the boutique category, whether you're a Pilates studio or you're a CrossFit box. If you're a small business owner, what do you need to know? And then there's businesses that are coming to the aid there. But yeah, I mean, those are also like a diamond in the rough if you find someone who really knows what they're talking about and who's really been in the trenches from a business standpoint, and you certainly have. The piece that I want to understand from you, because this is still that same stumbling point for a lot of small business owners, and that is the sustainability. Like if you go into your passion project, you can get totally lost because it's your passion project. But how do you make it a sustainable long-term business? Like how did you make it sustainable for yourself? And if you had to go back and do it again, how would you create those guardrails so that you didn't have 17-hour days? Because I don't think we'd recommend that to anyone.
No, absolutely not. But as we know, when you run a small business, everything falls onto you. There, you don't have the privilege of having all these different people in different positions that deal with accounts, operations.
That's you.
But
That's you. That's you.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's my clean the toilets. I think that systems is the biggest thing. Everything we do, if a client comes to us at Boxology and they say, I was thinking of doing this, we would say to them, is it scalable? Is it sustainable? And if it isn't, don't do it, because you have to learn that the things that you're doing, in the CrossFit world or in small gyms and small businesses, your clients, your members feel like they have this they're quite involved in the business. So they're always going to want things, customer service, people are always going to want things. And some of them are obviously out of reach. And we regularly run customer surveys because in actual fact, it's a very British thing. We only ever say what we don't, everything's great. We're like, do you like your hair at the hairdressers? And you're looking in the mirror thinking, oh my God, it's awful. But you say, oh, it's lovely. Thank you. It's really nice. So we don't often get from our members that really honest feedback. And when we do, we apply it. But some of them are not scalable. You can never do them, and that's really, I feel, what helps the business maintain longevity. Things have to be scalable. Staff is by far the biggest thing and the hardest thing, I would say, for majority of CrossFit owners, small gym owners, because if you don't have great staff and you don't necessarily treat your staff, and by treat I mean in terms of salary and growth, qualification development, they won't stay because the next CrossFit gym around the corner will have them. So for my staff, majority of my staff have been 5 years plus. We treat them like you would if you took on a staff member at a global business. They have all the privileges of a global business, and we continuously develop them. And their salaries are good, because I think, again, that's another area of the struggle in this industry, is that salaries are not necessarily great and they're not attractive enough for people to want to stay.
Mm-hmm.
But like any business, if you want your staff to stay, you need to pay them well for what they're worth. Retention, I would say, has been the biggest thing that we've worked on at Aphobos, because acquisition is very loud, but retention is very quiet. And what we do well for Boxology, but at Aphobos, is that we have a full retention system. We implement 30 to 60 to 90-day rule. And we have an understanding of, and obviously we have the data and the statistics of where people are likely to drop off when they really need you, as in the gym in that moment. And that system has worked. But everything that we do in Aphobos is run as a system. Systems and operations, I would say, in the UK gyms has been the biggest thing through Boxology that we've helped with. It's amazing that you go into gyms and they don't have a CRM. They don't know what that is. They just have an Excel spreadsheet with people's names on. The skills that we have in Boxology is when we develop with our clients. We have the 4 pillars. So we have systems and operation, sales and retention, coach development, and then marketing. And, you know, we work with our clients in a sense of what are your pain points? What's keeping you up at night? And we'll fix them. But when we fix them, what we do is implement a system.
I just want to build the bridge from, because you started your CrossFit box and it was bootstrapped just like everybody else, and you had a roller coaster journey where you had to relocate kind of under duress, but yet through it all you were able to evolve into this sustainable, scalable business. As soon as that connection is made for businesses and like getting out of the weeds as a business owner, every little detail, maybe rabbit holes that aren't serving you, and focusing on the big things, which are your operations, like your operational facility, your people, and then your sales and retention. If you have those 3 rocks and you have a systemic approach to those 3 rocks, you can continue to measure and iterate your business. So you got there, and then you've now moved your life and your business to the UAE and started Boxology. So tell me that chapter of the journey.
We were at the gym, my husband and I, and you know that that bridge that you were talking about. We had that honest conversation. It was when I would say the gym was really challenging, and we had that. Can we do this? Do we want to do this anymore? I don't want to work 17 hours. You know, by installing all those systems, and you know, we had one of our hardest times at the gym. People, I think, in 1 month, probably one of our worst months, we lost 20 members, which for a CrossFit gym is huge.
It's huge. Yeah.
We made really big, bold business decisions. And that month we put our prices up. You know, we kind of learned that we had to make tough decisions for the business to continue, for those that other members that were here, for it to stay the way it was. We needed it to grow. You know, obviously in the UK, there's lots of different influences on small businesses that are quite negative at the moment, tax. And we had that hard conversation, like, what do we do? So we had this goal and we said, right, we're going to get the gym to its peak performance. But at the same time, we were still kind of doing what we were telling our Boxology UK clients not to do, that we were still in the business and not on the business. We took that step back. I very much focused on coach development and systems and operations. My husband took on the sales and retention role. We wasn't coaching day to day. We quietly moved away from that process. And Boxology was successful in the UK. We had kind of that reach of CrossFit clients and people reaching out to us directly. In the UAE, it's got such a health and fitness is just so strong. The Prince has a 2030 vision for UAE to be the leader in fitness. And we kind of said, why don't we spend some time together? It's not something we've been together 10 years. I mean, very rarely have we spent a full day together. Obviously, yeah, I know. From having our son as well as 8, he's turned 8 this year.
Business. Yeah.
Yeah. As you know, running a business, having a child, you're kind of back and forth from the school, but you're working in the evening, you're working in the morning. So we said, look, let's get Aphobos to a place where it's, you know, Boxology is
Primary.
Aphobos is our client. And let's go and see what it would be like to live in another country that is powerful for fitness. We didn't really have any idea of how Boxology would fit in. And it was still evolving as a business, to be honest, because we hit the ground running with lots of CrossFit clients. And as we were taking new clients on, we were evolving the business and we were learning from them in a sense of what they needed and developing the 4 pillars to support these businesses. So we came here very much that small fish in a big pond. Culturally, there's obviously a big culture difference. And there's the way that businesses are run is quite different. And the gyms here are, like beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gyms. But what we did notice was, although the gyms were amazing, the coaching and classes were not. They really needed to work on the community. It's very transient in Dubai, particularly. People move about a lot. There's a competition there. There's this gym here. There's that one's just open around the corner. So that kind of community that you have maybe in your suburb CrossFit gym is a little bit lost. So how do they find that? How do we develop that? Knowing that there's lots of different memberships in Dubai. You can have a membership that is like a lifestyle membership that allows you to access different gyms. So people have that rather than your direct gym membership. There was a very, very different culture. And we visited, I think, 87 gyms in 3
You said
weeks.
that. I think that's amazing. I mean, in terms of just like shopping the market and really understanding, getting to know a new market, because as you say, the UAE and I think every country in the world is at a different stage of saturation and adoption in fitness. But because there's this commitment to the initiative, there's a much different intention, I think, behind the sector in the countries that are making these kinds of commitments. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
and I would say the biggest difference is that the health in Dubai, the UAE in general, is being pushed forward by higher up. It's good to be fit. This is what we can offer as a country for you. This is the vision of our country to make sure we're the fittest country. We're gonna, because it's hot, we're gonna build a 5-kilometer indoor running track. I mean, at the moment they have, I think, 4 to 6 malls in Dubai run a 5K run through the mall on a Saturday morning before the malls open. So people come, it's very much community based, slow, fast. There's a whole route to do. I mean, these things just wouldn't happen in the UK. And I think the driving force behind the initiative here was a real attraction for us in terms of the agency and the consultants, because it allowed us to have a reach towards what we want the consultancy to be like. And I think in the UK, we would have been held back by a lot of things. The other big difference I notice is because it's very transient, friendships are made in different ways. People are so willing to connect you in Dubai. They're like, let me introduce you to so-and-so. Let me tell you about this person. Oh, you'd be great. Work with them. And it was so refreshing I had never experienced that in business before. It was so, so refreshing. And everybody really, really genuinely wants to help other people. And that's allowed us to reach out to companies that we thought perhaps would be out of reach.
Okay.
And develop relationships in the fitness and health industry. You've met someone walking the dog who's given you contact details to the head of somewhere. It's really, really refreshing. And I would say that's a very common thing here.
Mm-hmm.
We're definitely finding our way in terms of what Dubai needs. Dubai and Abu Dhabi, actually, both, and what they need and how the gyms are and how we can help support and grow small gyms, businesses, CrossFit gyms, Hyrox gyms, hybrid gyms. So here I would say that retention has obviously been something new to them since the situation. A lot of people obviously initially left, come back, but because Dubai has been somewhere people just want to be, retention's not necessarily been something on their radar until it's needed.
It's a different rule. Yeah, the rules are different. Like it sounds like from what you're saying, your four pillars still apply, right? Like you need operational excellence, you need good quality coaching and member experience, and you need a focus on sales and retention and systems to support. Like this still applies. So like if you're the boss of the world and you get your dream client coming to you in the UAE or Abu Dhabi, and you're designing with them the perfect functional training facility, like what does good look like? They're going to listen to everything you say, they're going to apply it, they've got the budget for all recommendations. Like this is blue sky. Paint the picture.
I would say that what we need to offer for gyms now is very much a lifestyle environment. I think, we talked about this a little bit earlier about COVID. I think since COVID, people's work-life balance has really, really changed. That British tradition of 9 to 5 job, that we develop the kids in school that way. We expect people to go to work and do a 9 to 5 job. I don't think really exists anymore. And people work from home 1, 2, 3 days a week. They have this lifestyle need. Um, coffee shops, I don't think have ever done so well as they have in the last 5 to 10 years. And the reason for that is because people are working from a coffee shop or working from home. And I would say that's one of the biggest elements we need to develop into the gym environment, is giving people the ability to be able to work from their gym space. I definitely believe we need a hybrid system for a gym. It would definitely have a functional area, CrossFit if you like, an element of bringing Hyrox into that in terms of longer style workouts. People like to do sport. Somebody that does CrossFit might suddenly decide they want to do a triathlon, they want to do a run. We need to be able to fulfill those needs within the gym that we are designing for them. So that they're not going elsewhere to be doing their marathon training or going to do their swim over here because, they can't get it at their local CrossFit gym. So we need to bring those needs together in terms of what the gym looks like. It would be able to facilitate those needs. I think the other element of now running a very, very successful gym is understanding how your client's day-to-day looks.
Right.
And I think CrossFit has struggled over the last years because of the timetable. And I think that from in the gym industry, we need to find a system that allows us to understand that lifestyle change of our clients and being able to apply that in some way. So I think that being able to feel like there is growth in health as well. So
Mm-hmm.
there's obviously, you touched on this with your Dr. PT. I think that in Dubai and the UAE GCC, there's definitely a direction that we're going in a sense that you come to your gym and something's wrong, there's somebody there. At the moment, we're very limited to it being possibly a sports masseuse, maybe a physio or a
Mm-hmm.
chiropractor. We have those in-house at Aphobos, but, that's still very rare. But can we refer people? No, we can only help people,
Right.
and we can only help people who genuinely think that we have that understanding to help them. But I think that the fitness world definitely needs to have an integration with health to allow easier access for people to get better. That might be injury, niggle. It might be something else.
Why would you want to miss out on the GLP-1 boom that is just taking over the world and helping to address obesity? And these are a group of people who need strength training. And CrossFit and functional training is a perfect solution because you're providing guided strength training. You're not just turning someone on a weight room floor open, but in order to address that, you need people that have a certain level of knowledge and a certain level of skills
Mm.
to address that population.
I don't think it'd be too far in Dubai that there'd be doctors at the gyms. I don't think
Yeah,
that's out of reach.
that's
What
wonderful.
they prescribe might well be fitness based. Maybe it might be peptides, it might be other elements of training, but bringing those two worlds together so that you have your PT, your CrossFit coach, your Hyrox coach that has an understanding of, and a high level understanding of what you need, that puts you onto the expert, having the experts together. Those jobs could be easily integrated into the gym environment for
Sure.
sure. And I think that can happen in places where in other countries that has that kind of private healthcare, or, you're paying for what you need.
Mhm.
I think majority of people would love to be able to have that access in a health space. So it becomes a wellness, not just a
I mean, this is again something that we've constantly attempted in the fitness industry, but because of those low standards and that plan B mentality, at least in the markets like the UK and the EU and the US, it hasn't been realized. But when you're talking about a market where there's a genuine holistic commitment to overall health, and there's a possibility of you creating a center where there could be doctors and physios and putting together like your perfect health team to help you with your journey wherever you are, and then you have like tech to actually scale and amplify it. This is very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that we notice a lot of people leave gyms because of health reasons, whether that's an injury. Majority of injuries and niggles can obviously be managed by scalability, but um, a lot of other things like women's, menopause, women going through periods and feeling a little bit lost, like they don't know what to do with training that day. We lose a lot of people through health in general, in terms of memberships. And I think that for gyms, understanding better people's better health allows them to just directly know how they can deal with that client, how can they treat that client. And I think the flip side of that with, say, CrossFit and Hyrox is if you're not feeling yourself today because of, it might be your period, it might be something else, it might be stress, it might be a niggle, the scaling's there, but sometimes you just want to do something a little bit different. You might want to do just your own back squat,
Mobility
or you might
recovery,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I think that's where I kind of really want to dig deep in thinking about what an individual would need. What do they need in their lifetime from a gym, from wellness, from fitness, and trying to be able to build that under one roof as much as possible. That's the longevity of fitness for sure.
And I think that, if you have systems that are capturing this data, then all of that is going to inform your programming, like your timetable that tends to be like a big pain point for lots of operators, your customer journey. Like all of this is scalable if you're able to capture this information about your members and then start doing things with it. And then engagement looks a whole lot different, upsell looks a whole lot different. Yeah, very, very cool. Anything else, or do you have any other blue sky wishes for this market?
Well, I mean, it's very hard to get a swimming pool in the UK, isn't it? But yeah. And there's some beautiful, beautiful gyms in the UAE, and I think that what they do well is, I mean, I'm actually in one now that has a slide.
Okay,
I don't
fun.
necessarily say that's on my wish list, but it's definitely. I think, where do you want to be every day is the way we've got to think about it. What would make you? I definitely think having, in the Globo gym, sometimes you have, let's say, a soft play or something for children. Definitely not that, but I think the kind of F&B is a really amazing opportunity for you to be able to bring your work life and not lose the ability to be able to do your passion every day. Definitely for me, it's been something that's allowed me to continue. My husband's been away for the last 2 weeks, so I've been on my own with my son. Obviously, their holidays in Dubai started like a month ago.
Okay.
So I'm able to bring him to, we have a functional area at one of the gyms that I go to, and there is a coffee shop, restaurant, and I can see him from where I'm training. These are the things that I think we're very restricted about in the UK, in a sense of the laws, and the space that we have is not as allowing as it is in Dubai. But I would say that having for majority of people, our parents, and being able to maintain what you love doing day by day, helps you be a better person for your child. And sometimes you may, not just as a mum, as a dad, but sometimes you have to say, I can't train today, I can't do anything today because I don't have any childcare, or I'm doing this and doing that. And I think being able to fit that within your day, obviously quality time with your children is the most important thing. But if you can fit your time in around that and they're able to come along, I think it's an amazing environment for children to be able to watch and see, and they think, oh, this is what life should look like for me. I should be keeping fit, I should be eating well, I'm seeing all these people. Yeah, they're seeing that every day, and it just becomes normal to them. It just becomes a way of life. I think that is something that would be really magical for us to bring to gyms.
I think, it dropped off the radar. It seemed like in the 2000s, like the childcare in gyms just sort of evaporated, and with it evaporated a lot of options for women, right? Because if you are a primary caregiver, you don't have the flexibility to bring your kid with you everywhere. That means you can't go everywhere. So I think it's a really interesting point to bring up. And I'm glad that there are options in the UAE for that, because, that was also, you shared in your journey, like your stepdad got and supported you, and your mom supported you on your fitness journey. And that was such a, like, look where it led. So
Yes.
modeling for your kids is super important, and being able to do that in this busy world. And if you want to have quality time with your kids, you've got to have enough within you to show up so that you can provide quality. And a lot of that is being able to have a little time for connecting with yourself so that you have more to give. So the knock-on effect is huge. I'm really happy that you brought that up. So, last question is, at the collective, we love to spotlight other women doing great work. Is there someone in your network who you'd like to give a shout out for and amplify? Who is it and what's she doing?
Well, absolutely. And I think that she would be amazing to be on your show too. So we've talked a lot about how our industry is seen as, a plan B or a go-to if perhaps you're academically not so strong at school. And there's a lady I connected with since being here in Dubai called Evelyn Mair, and she runs FitIQ education. And what she's doing for coach development, which obviously is a huge passion of mine, is amazing. She is basically trying to develop this new way of seeing qualifications, in the sense that you do your personal training, off you go to work at your local Globo gym. 2 years later, nobody really knows how well you're doing as an individual. Have you kind of upskilled? And what she's doing is changing that process. And she's taking new PTs that are qualified recently with her, strength and conditioning coaches, and staying with them through that journey, and ensuring that the companies that are employing them are actually doing their due diligence in looking after them and developing them and progressing them. And she's got this amazing business with her husband as well, small business owner, and she's just come back from America. She's around the world trying to change the world through fitness in a similar way. And we hold a lot of our morals. She has
Values.
great yes, she has
Yeah.
great integrity, and she's just very powerful in her position. And I think the way that she's trying to change how people are qualified and how they're looked after and how they're developed, and that perception of it not being something that is, if you don't do well, is amazing. The work she's doing is really, really amazing. And I've only known her a short time, but I'm very, very pleased I've met her.
Wonderful. I love those. I love those aligned shout outs. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and perspective, Gemma. I'm sure this is the first of many conversations.
I hope so.
Thanks for listening to Connecting the Dots. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, share it with someone who'd enjoy it too. You can find all of our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And if you follow the show, leave a rating. It helps more people discover our work. Until next time, keep connecting the dots and keep building the future you want to see.